You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cedarquist, joined by Oliver Camacho and Matt Cummings. All right, this week we go inside the huddle with the newly minted general director of Opera Philadelphia. It's the return of friend of the show, Anthony Roth Costanzo. Now that's what I call reaping the benefits of the OBS bump. And then we'll dip into the listener mailbag on your reactions to our recent interview with Extinction Rebellion and the results of our Sweet 16 Schools of Singing showdown. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, friend of the show, Huw Montague Rendall, will sing Billy Budd in Vienna. If you've ever wanted to meet Oliver Camacho in person, he will be sleeping outside the Staatsoper for the entire run. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, Spotify, kick follow on Apple Podcasts, hit that plus sign. Send us the voice memo. Email us the hot takes. Mailbag at operaboxscore.com. You can even just record your thoughts using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website. It's operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, however you get your voice here, you're going to get the OBS beer coaster, the OBS lapel pin, and the #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot date. Hot date. You're not going to get a hot date. Well, you might, Oliver.
With a foamy finger, maybe, yeah. Quick sports roundup here. The Madrid Open is currently in action, and there's a potential showdown between two of my loves, Rafael Nadal, who is finally back after what seems like a decade of being out of play. He might meet with Carlos Alcaraz in the semis. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I would do. I probably would just have to not watch and have somebody tell me the result. It's too much for me.
Matthew Cummings, how's life?
I'm good. I'm doing hopefully almost as good as Olympian Gabby Douglas, who qualified for this year's games. What year is it?
Will she be the oldest?
She might be.
And I just remember her being looking like a 10-year-old girl.
She's only 28, but it's been 8 years away. And this has saved me from my weekly ritual of having to Google sports to see if I can find any update to talk about. When it's just the three of us, there's nowhere to hide.
But I feel like I'm the least excited person about the Olympics on this show. I don't know. I have yet to get excited about it.
And you also like opera the least, I think, too.
I think I like the NFL the most, though. Probably the NFL draft was last weekend in Motown, and the Bears predictably picked Caleb Williams from USC as their #1 pick for the whole draft. Quarterback, we're going to see if that guy can turn it around. Maybe we'll get a fancy new stadium, too, in Chicago. With your taxpayer dollars, Camacho, let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside.
On April 25th, the day our last episode dropped, friend of the show, Opera Philadelphia, did us dirty and gave us just a 2.5-hour heads up on the big news that Anthony Roth Costanzo's appointment as the company's next general director was dropping. Publicists, look, take note. We need at least a week's notice if we're going to coordinate with your announcements. Actually, better yet, just invite us to the boardroom where they're making these big decisions.
Exactly.
All right, anyways, Opera Philadelphia made it up to us by giving us exclusive access, I say, to our friend Anthony while he was on his lunch break from rehearsals at the Met's upcoming Orfeo and Eurydice. Apologies in advance for the sound quality, but hey, stick with it. It improves very quickly.
Anthony Roth Costanzo, welcome back to Opera Box Score. This is the craziest time probably in your career. You're rehearsing for Orfeo e Eurydice, the Mark Morris production at the Met. This big announcement just came out just yesterday as we're recording, or 2 days ago. You were presenting your own project called Myths. So much is happening. I can't believe you found these 20 minutes to talk to me, but welcome back to the podcast.
Oliver, I always have 20 minutes to talk to you, and I love what you do, so I'm so happy to be back.
So we have to start with the Opera Philadelphia announcement. And, Opera Philadelphia has been a little bit weird in a good way. Like their weirdness has become part of their brand. And I feel like weirdness is like what you serve up like every day. So do you feel like there's an alignment in the weirdest sphere for you there?
Absolutely. I think the weird is great. But I also know that I've been doing opera for 30 years, and I'm very steeped in the traditions of opera, and I love them. So in no way do I use the weirdness to kind of shut down the beauty of opera. I like to think of it as embroidering tradition. And that's what I think Opera Philadelphia has done. They've presented canonical repertoire. They've been a real instigator of new works. And they've been a driver for innovation in our industry. And I've certainly tried to do the same thing. Of course, as a countertenor who sings, I sing a lot of really old music and a lot of contemporary music. So I feel connected in that sense on both ends of the spectrum. I think when I was doing the interview for Opera Philadelphia, one of the questions they asked me was, is there anything in our mission that's missing? And so I read their mission and I thought, wow, this is so what I want to do, except there is one word missing. And that word is collaboration. And I think the future of Opera Philadelphia and what I can bring is strategic partnerships, not only within our field of classical music, but outside of that field with fashion, with theater, with dance, with other companies, restaurants, sports, universities, things that you wouldn't imagine. And my career has really been about thinking in that global interdisciplinary way and seeing how it can bring opera to more people and bring more people to opera.
Dovetailing off of that idea, I think you're absolutely right. I do think that opera in 2024 has got to take a look around and see what is working for people and their entertainment dollars and with the time that they're willing to spend in leaving their home to attend something. And I mean, I don't like that now we have to be everything to everybody. We have to like cast the net so wide that we risk losing the specificity of opera. But I also understand that right now we need to cast our net wide and welcome new people into the fold. And it's a very tricky balance. And I'm so glad you started by saying that you want to preserve its traditions and you want to like embroider the traditions. But yeah, I feel like there's, we're all scared right now about what the future is going to hold for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of reason to celebrate as well. And I see the liabilities in the industry as an asset, which is to say that we're rebuilding. And as we rebuild, we can understand what works and what doesn't. We can track those things. And then what I hope to build at Opera Philadelphia with an incubator I have called Scene, and some of what I have built around my other performances in terms of engagement, in terms of marketing, in terms of new works and ways of developing new works. I think all of that can help us understand how we can take this art form forward into the next chapter. And if we track that, and if we understand what that growth is, we'll be able to sustain it and we'll be able to share it with our colleagues.
Hard agree. And I think the success of something like Akhenaten shows that there is an audience for things that are new and for things that are interdisciplinary. That said, Akhenaten was an expensive show to put on. What are some of the things we can do with, maybe not that it's a much more modest resources, but they are lesser resources for a company like Opera Philadelphia?
Well, the board chair of Opera Philadelphia is an amazing businessman named Steve Klasko. And he talks about this idea of radical unscaling, which is a kind of democratization of a lot of things. And in our case, with the art form, taking it outside of the walls of the Opera House, giving people different points of access. And I think of what I did with the New York Philharmonic Bandwagon in creating and producing that along with the New York Phil. We created so much joy around music there and so much access to that music by doing it in every borough of New York with 81 concerts that eventually it changed the way people thought about that institution. It brought people closer to it, and the press that came around it and the excitement around it was also useful in redefining the brand. So I think there are lots of ways we can be imaginative with this art form that is meant to pull together different disciplines, right? It began with theater and poetry. There was fashion in the costume design. There was art in the set design. And then there was music. And so how do we explore those different elements, the audiences that subscribe to all those different métiers, and then we can go out find them do smaller performances that are in no way less distinguished or excellent, but that, as you're saying, have a different scale. And then we build a group of people, an audience that's excited to come into our house and they feel welcome there.
Absolutely. I commented on this the last time you were on the show, but whatever assignment you're given, you seem to do it so well. And you seem to do it in a way that's creative and uniquely your brand. There is a history of the singer administrator. Some of it is good. Some of it is rotten. I wonder what you see you can do to originate this role, and maybe what some of the lessons there are to learn from the successes and maybe not so great versions of that role.
Well, I think there's this really interesting opportunity to have a working artist, not an artist who's sunsetting, but a working artist also leading the company. There are certain things in terms of my artistic sensibility, but also in terms of the creativity that I can bring to fundraising, to structuring the operations, and to imagining how the partnerships can work differently. That will be really exciting. I think in looking backward, there are certainly singers who have attracted attention, support, artists, networks to places. And there are singers who have been very cognizant of what is needed to make art. I think often that's something that is missed out on, and I see it happen all over the world when I sing. Artists need certain space. Sometimes they need more time. Sometimes they need less time. It depends for every artist. But having a sixth sense for what that needs after 30 years in the opera and what will make a successful performance, I think is invaluable. I think when I look at some of the mistakes, a lot of people say to me, "You're an artist. What are you thinking in terms of the programming? What are you thinking? What's your season going to be next season?" Well, that's actually not what my focus is. My focus is first on fundraising. How are we going to get the resources we need? And how are we going to creatively make a new vision that will draw those resources, that will excite people enough to give so that we can do that work? And so I think sometimes artists make a mistake thinking that they can pawn off the business side of things to other people. And I think if you know me, you know that my career has been sticking my foot and my nose into the business side of things to create initiatives around Akhenaten to help it sell tickets, to imagine what is possible in a practical way to make opera succeed. And I think a mistake would be to go in as an artist and just say, "Oh, I'm just going to be concerned with the art."
Well, speaking of being concerned with the art, you have curated this series called Myths, which I mentioned at the top of the interview, and it's ongoing, and there are, I believe, 2 more performances as this goes to air. I also want to just touch on the idea that you're a part of an incubator called American Modern Opera Company, and we interviewed Matthew O'Coin about that, and I know some of your collaborators have also been on the show, and it's something that's really exciting to me. I guess I would like at this point just to tell the audience what, if they're available in New York or in Brooklyn, to see the last 2 Myths performances, what that's all about.
What I wanted to do, because I'm singing my dream role of Orfeo at the Metropolitan Opera from May 16th to June 8th. So come see that and reach out to me on social media if you want a discount code, and I will give it to you. But what I wanted to do is take this idea of myth that exists within Orpheus and the antiquity of Greek myth, and I wanted to see how it applied to our culture today, how it applied to us personally. So I've handed the keys to the car to several artists for some performances around the city. And last week we did a performance with the National Black Theater about the myths of Haiti. And it was incredibly exciting, moving, and beautiful. And this morning we went into Rosalind Yallow Charter School in the Bronx with almost 500 students. And we performed with a salsa band, dancers, and an artist who had taken the art kids had made about myth and made it into costumes for us to wear. So we're really finding different ways to spin out ideas that come from the nexus of Orpheus. If you're in Brooklyn on May 5th, please come to BAM, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, at 12 p.m. on Sunday, May 5th. And you will see a performance that we did in the school. We'll do it with the salsa band. We'll do it on the steps of the Opera House. It's going to be a really exciting, exuberant, fun time. And we hope to see you there. Another thing I've done is a collaboration with the Morgan Library, Harvard University, and Opera Omaha. And I will be excavating the archives of the Morgan Library that has original manuscripts by Gluck, by Handel, by Mozart. And with an incredible Argentinian filmmaker, Pix Talarico, we have made these manuscripts into a kind of trip, a video trip that will be projected on a screen behind which I will sing and be amidst the projections of the composer's manuscripts. And that's on May 7th. So there's a lot of exciting engagement that we're doing around Orfeo. And I hope you come either to one of those or to see Orfeo at the Opera House, because it's so fun. And the big selling point is it's 90 minutes, no intermission.
I certainly want to talk a little bit more about Orfeo in a second, but I'm just looking at your website with the vanity myths, and I'll share that on our own website. But it looks like we missed the opportunity to talk about Art is Gay. And, we sort of danced around this topic at the beginning of the show, the beginning of the interview, but we're talking about, the audiences and their affinities. And I have felt, and maybe you agree with me because we're almost the same age, I'm a little bit older than you, but that our generation didn't go to the opera. What happened? Like, our elders who, were wiped out by AIDS certainly would have gone to the opera, and they certainly would have, mentored us to appreciate ballet and fashion and fine dining and the opera. And we know that we lost that generation of mentors. But I don't even know now if that tradition continues, and if we're going to see mentorship of the next generation of gay people, because I feel like everything is so dispersed now, and that tradition died, But I feel like you know the assignment, and you know what audience will be attracted to what, and that you are going to do something explicit like call a show Art is Gay, which I love. Can you address that topic and how you are reaching out to try to recapture those audience members?
Absolutely. And I love that question. And I think that idea of having lost that mentorship is really important. But I certainly feel it myself in people who aren't that much older and who are. People like Wayne Kostenbaum, who I read when I was in college, and then I got to know and have roped him into performances. That's someone who's led the way for me. But I certainly think that you have to let people know that opera is for them, and that in fact there is nothing more gay than the cathartic, ridiculous emergency that opera constantly represents. And I also think there's the thing about the human voice is it's a direct expression of self. And expressing yourself is a very difficult thing to do, and we struggle with that. I struggled with it when I created a show with Justin Vivian Bond called Only an Octave Apart, because I didn't know how to sing my true identity. I knew how to sing, I knew how to be myself within another character, but it somehow was peeling away a different layer to sing, to put together songs that revealed something true about what my identity was. And I learned how to get comfortable with that. And in turn, I think it touched people and it made people laugh because we were being ourselves and we were finding a way to sing our identity. So I think once people understand that there's a direct communication, it comes out of my body and it goes into yours. There's not even a microphone or wires or speakers. Those things are all barriers. They're all protection against the truth of the voice. And in opera, there is no protection. It's the unprotected sex of the arts. So I think it's a great opportunity to spread gay love.
We could talk about that forever, because I think you said something that was so potent about the nudity of the human voice. And I got to figure out a way to get a pull quote out of what you just said, because it was amazing. But I know we're running out of time, and I just want to touch on one more topic, which is the Orfeo. I love Mark Morris's work. I'm crazy about Ying Fang, and I feel like she represents a tradition. She's so excellent. And you are obviously also so excellent and amazing, and you know that. But I'm so crazy about putting you two together in the show. And Elena, who is also has been a guest on the show. What an amazing team you guys have for this show. Could you please say nice things about Ying Fang to confirm my suspicions that she's amazing?
I have been obsessed with Ying Fang for years, and I just, I just was in rehearsal with her, and as I left, she said, "You sound beautiful," and I said, "No, I don't. I'm not at Ying Fang level." So she makes me want to be a better singer. She is. Her tone is spectacular. Her acting is incredible. Her expression, her elegance, her language. I mean, everything about her is just completely consummate. And she seems to do it with such ease, but also with an appropriate amount of what I would call resistance that sort of keeps people engaged. So she's one of those ideal performers, and I cannot believe that I get to be on stage with her. We're loving it. And Elena Villalon is just a total breath of fresh air, a burst of energy, and is absolutely delightful in this role. And I'm excited to be performing with her this summer in Santa Fe in the world premiere of The Righteous by Greg Spears, and also next season in Detroit in Rinaldo. So we have quite a path ahead of us. It's an incredible cast. Mark's choreography could not fit the music better. And I think this is a wonderful opera in that it represents reform, right? It was Gluck's way of reforming the Baroque longueur into a very tight 90-minute succinct story that grabbed your attention and kept it twirling with dance.
Cannot wait. I think I have to quit my job and go to New York to see this in person. Anthony Roth Costanzo, it's been so great to connect with you again. Congratulations on everything. We are watching. We are paying attention. You inspire us constantly.
That means the world. Thank you. It's so great to talk to you. And I hope to connect with everyone who's listening soon.
Just a little bit of a tiny desk concert recorded at home. This was during the pandemic with Anthony Roth Costanzo and Justin Vivian Bond singing the Song to the Furies from Orfeo and Eurydice. That's not going to be the version they're doing at the Met.
Oh, they're not doing the Kate Bush mashup version?
Just a little teaser there. And before we go to our listener mailbag, Matt, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what is the history, at least the recent history, of the opera singer becoming the general director?
I mean, define recent. If we're
okay, if you want to go, you can go back as far as you'd like. Just
in the 20th century, maybe. Let's cap it. So, the first example I can think of is Edward Johnson, who was one of the first general managers of the Met. He took over in the mid 30s. And kind of by accident, the person that who they had hired, died unexpectedly. And he was working as a tenor named Edward Di Giovanni. Got to get those Italian props in somehow. And he took over and then ended up steering the company through the Second World War and until, everyone knows Rudolph Bing, who took over in 1950.
We have Beverly Sills, who, realized that her career was sunsetting. I think that she maybe had a couple more years left in her, but, the voice was showing signs of wear.
Signs of Donizetti Queens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think she still had, dramatic potential in her voice. But anyway, so she stopped singing and steered the New York City Opera, and maybe through its best times.
She was there for the whole 80s and into the 90s.
And that was definitely when New York City Opera was focusing on American artists and was about to begin its era of, doing Baroque music and doing new works and whatnot. Maybe she's had a hand in that since she was, a Handelian herself. I think overall, successful.
It's successful enough that Lincoln Center asked her to come on as chairwoman when she stepped down from that position.
Then we have other examples. One comes to mind.
Someone who had the nation's capital and entertainment capital in his stranglehold as he attempted to find a company who would let him conduct if he raised a lot of money for them. What? Who said that? Not me. Allegedly.
That's so oblique.
Yeah. But isn't that the role? I mean, actually, Anthony says in our conversation that he sees his main role as, fundraiser in chief. Because that's really what needs to, in order to give resources to these organizations, you need the money.
It's absolutely true. And that's why it's a good hire, is because you do need a bit of star power at the top, right? You want some youth. You want somebody who is connected with the 21st century repertoire. You want someone who's got that star power, got those good looks. And, Anthony obviously checks all of those boxes. Yeah. I would be curious to see who else was in the pool for this process, if there was a pool or not. He's following on the heels of David Devan, who was there 13 years as general director. I'm excited. We want to hear your voice. Send us that voice memo or email us your hot takes on what's happening in Philadelphia, or if you can think of other singers who have become general directors. Let us know what you're thinking. Mailbag at operaboxscore.com. You can also just record your thoughts using the You Got Something to Say tab on the website. That's operaboxscore.com. And if you do that, you might get into the listener mailbag like this.
Yeah, you got something to say? Then yeah, all right, you can say something. This is Listener Mailbag.
Hey, George. This is Anthony from the Bronx. I've called you before, George. Anyway, sorry I haven't been in touch with you recently. I had some health issues. I don't want to go into it, but I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Anyway, I was listening to your latest show, and you guys interviewed that guy Rosendal, who's a protester for climate change. I gotta say, he seems like he's a pretty effective guy. But I'm wondering if he's willing to branch out into other areas of protest. For my money, I wish they made more R-rated comedies in Hollywood. Remember Animal House? Remember Porky's? Those were good movies. Anyway, I'm wondering if you have his email. I could reach out to him to have this glaring movement brought to light. Okay, that's all for me, George. Although I will say, I think the guy's name is John Mark Rosendahl. You ever notice presidential assassins always have 3 names? Oh boy. I hope he can keep it in check. But good luck to him. He's fighting the good fight. Just like you are, George, with this podcast. I'll see you, George.
Oh, Anthony, thank you for your call. Yeah, so if you have 3 names, you're more likely to assassinate a president, I guess.
I guess so. It's those pregnant pauses, right? It's like he's just taking a suck on his cigar and just blowing out the smoke as he tries to think of that next little gem that he wants to drop.
Matt, are you too young to know what Porky's was?
I am, as you know, a student of older media, so I have heard references to Porky's, but I have never seen it.
Have you seen Animal House?
I have seen Animal House.
Okay.
But did you watch it on VHS like me?
I actually may have watched it on VHS.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm not that young.
We haven't had one of those, well, maybe because it was so toxic masculinity, but we haven't had one of those movies that's just about, puberty and what happens when you put a bunch of guys in high school.
No, there was a big wave of those 15 years ago. But now that with the frat pack, your Will Ferrell and Ben Stiller and Owen and Luke Wilson and all those guys, all the Judd Apatow movies were kind of trying to recreate that. But those have definitely phased out. And really, that's really incisive pop culture commentary coming from our friend in the Bronx.
All right, so what else is in the mailbag this week, George?
Woody in DC writes in with a triple header. First of all, telling us that Anthony Roth Costanzo is taking the helm at Opera Philadelphia. That
Breaking the news to us.
Too little, too late, Woody. But the other two quick hits are great. Woody says we're pretty excited here in DC about a new production of Turandot at WNO. New world premiere ending by composer Christopher Tin and librettist Susan Sun-Hae Stanton. And that is been developed under the general director there, Francesca Zambello.
I've been listening to Christopher Tin's The Lost Birds, and it's very like cinematic and just beautiful, like in that kind of post-minimalism way. It's just beautiful, and I wonder how that style of writing, tonal and rhythmic, but with lots of like film score type of harmonies, how that will work with Puccini, or if he's even going to go in that direction,
We'll see.
Have you heard The Lost Birds, Matt?
I haven't, no.
Okay, it's that Voces 8 project about the passenger pigeon that went extinct.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
What will they think of next?
It's not funny, passenger pigeons.
Woody goes on to say, hey, I'm glad to hear that you have Indiana University in the Final Four. The argument that Woody makes is that so they do 5 opera productions a year, which means as an undergrad, you could see 20 operas plus some musicals probably. There's 1,700 students, 300 plus faculty, and on a 3-day visit last month, over just 3 days, Woody saw a baritone PhD recital, a soprano master's recital, a faculty guest recital with a countertenor, a bassoon recital, 2 choir concerts, and also the IU women's basketball first round game in front of 12,000 fans. What's not to like?
Okay, I think he gets us on the basketball game, but I think a lot of conservatories have that type of schedule. I mean, go to Northwestern in May and you'll have the chance.
You can't help but trip over student recitals. There's a reason it made it until the finals of our tournament. Like, it's undeniably a great institution. It kind of just came down to a David versus Goliath, and we all know what happened to Goliath.
Yikes! Yes. What we don't know is what's going to happen in the 2-minute drill. Luckily, that's next.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Vienna State Opera has announced their new season. Federica Lombardi will sing Norma, and friend of the show Huw Montague Rendall will be Billy Budd. As you can hear, Oliver needs a lie down. More highlights from this announcement in the talkback.
In an interview with Van magazine, Dame Sarah Connolly discussed both the music and politics surrounding her debut in the world premiere of the Saudi opera Sarka al-Yamama in Riyadh. Connolly, who had been notably outspoken on social media and harshly criticized the Saudi regime in the wake of the Jamal Khashoggi murder, had this to say about working in Saudi Arabia. While it was essentially the same group of people that were responsible for Khashoggi's murder who are still in charge, they are striving very, very hard to change all of this. If they weren't trying to change it, I'm not sure I'd have ended up here. In an unrelated story, Connolly's ex, or formerly Twitter account, has gone missing.
Catherine Goforth is the first recipient of the Washington National Opera True Voice Award, supporting the training of trans and non-binary opera singers and increasing their visibility in the industry. Quote, "It's so hard to fight against all of these systems of making opera that are really inherently transphobic," says Goforth. "It's so much easier just to build something new and do something different." Awardees receive a recital at the Kennedy Center and career training and artistic coaching through WNO's Kafritz Young Artist Program.
Pittsburgh Opera is honoring one of their operatic titans with the play The Passion of Mary Cardwell Dawson, about the titular founder of the National Negro Opera Company. The run comes as the local nonprofit National Opera House is working to renovate the building that served as the headquarters for the company.
The Red Priest, Antonio Vivaldi, is set to be the topic of not one, but 2 dueling films slated for release in 2025. One by Volker Schlöndorff about his creation of an all-female orchestra, and another, more traditional biopic by John Ottman, I Smell Oscar.
On the heels of her debut as Madama Butterfly, the Met has confirmed that Osmik Grigorian will be back in future seasons in the titular roles of Strauss's Salome and Janacek's Yennefer.
In trade news, La Scala has officially named Fortunato Ortombina as its new director, ending months of political controversy. He will take over from Dominique Meyer in September. Ortombina's appointment comes as Italy's far-right government of Premier Giorgia Meloni is trying to promote Italian nationals for leadership positions, favoring them over foreigners for major cultural posts.
Daniel Barenboim has been appointed honorary member of the Staatsoper unter den Linden and honorary chief conductor of the Staatskapelle Berlin. Barenboim stepped down as music director in 2023 due to health reasons.
On the disabled list, friend of the show Jonathan Tettleman withdrew from the aforementioned Butterfly at the Met, posting, quote, "I'm very sorry to report that I'm still unwell. We hope he'll recover in time for his Butterfly in HD broadcast. Chad Shelton has already taken one performance as Pinkerton."
And on this day, April 29th, in 1741, it was the first performance of Niccolò Giomelli's Ezio. That happened in Bologna. Haydn's opera, yes, he did write some of those. La Vera Costanza premiered at Esterhazy in 1799. Jumping a bit to 1923, Leoncavallo's Il Premio Baccio premiered posthumously in 1923. 1929, it was the first performance of Prokofiev's opera The Gambler, which was based on the Dostoevsky novel. Ildebrando Pizzetti's Lo Straniero premiered in Rome in 1930. The Bell Telephone Hour had its inaugural broadcast in 1940, and in 1990, it was the first performance of Philip Glass's chamber opera, Hydrogen Jukebox, in Philadelphia.
That's one for Weston. Birthdays include in 1774, German soprano Anna Gottlieb. Her teacher was Mozart himself, and she created the roles of Barbarina and Pamina. In 1842, it was the birth of Austrian operetta composer Karl Mühlacker, known for which operetta?
Der Bettelstudent, obviously.
Of course, thank you. In 1879, it was the birth of English conductor Sir Thomas Beecham. Another English conductor born on this day, 1895, was Sir Malcolm Sargent. In 1899, Duke Ellington was born in Washington, D.C. Happy birthday to conductor Zubin Mehta, born in Mumbai in 1936. We celebrate the birth of the late American tenor Kenneth Regal from Pennsylvania, born in 1938. Happy birthday to the defected Russian tenor Vladimir Popov, born this day in 1947. And on this day, April 29th, in 1955, it was the birth of my boyfriend, baritone Gino Quilico, Canadian, but born in New York City.
That's your 2-minute drill.
Oliver always gets on me for picking too many high voices for the On This Day clip. And today, I got to serve him up his first love, Gino Quilico, singing Valentin's aria from Faust.
This was around the time before Barahunk was a thing, but was becoming a thing. I've always just thought that Gino Quilico was so handsome. And yeah, he's on that Bohème with Kiri Takanawa and Richard Leach, which is like a very uneven recording. But I was so happy to have his... I think he's singing Schonard in that recording.
I think that's right, yeah.
He's also a notable bel canto and Mozart singer. Never had, the chops that his famous father did to sing like the big Verdi stuff. But I think a very elegant, cavalier baritone and good in intimate settings and just so handsome.
We are in the season of season announcements.
Season announcement season. So first, get something out of the way really quickly. We're going to go through this season, but Federica Lombardi singing Norma. I mean, I just fell in love with her voice like a minute ago. And she's already singing Norma. Please, please, managers, like, get control of your precious artists and don't let them sing Norma. It's too early.
We can't send her down the Sonia Yoncheva pathway already.
Plus, Vienna is not a small house either. I mean, it is a horseshoe technically, but it's not a teeny little Italian horseshoe. It's a big venue, and it could be punishing on the voice.
Okay, so let's go through some of these premieres. Don Carlo, which will star Osmond Gregorian.
Very excited about that one, personally.
And Joshua Guerrero. There'll be a second cast with Nicole Carr and Elena Garancha. Another premiere, Kurtag's Fin de Partie. I'm sure that's one for Weston. Yeah. They'll do a Magic Flute double cast with Georg Zeppenfeld and Julien Pregardien. Second cast will include Cyril Dubois. Norma, as mentioned before, will have Juan Diego Flores, weird, as Polione.
Interesting casting there.
Yeah.
And Ildebelda Barcangelo and Vasily Berzhanskaya. So Berzhanskaya has also sung Norma, so maybe they just do weird Normas in Europe. I don't know.
Yeah.
The second cast for Norma will have Freddie Di Tommaso, which is a more appropriate voice for Polione. Speaking of Sonia Yoncheva, she'll sing Iolanta. There's a new Tannhäuser, which will have a friend of the show, Clay Hilly, in the title role.
If I may, Oliver, let's just go back on those new productions. 2 directors to note. First of all, for the Don Carlo, that's directed in a new production by Kirill Serebrennikov, who somehow miraculously has escaped house arrest in Russia. He's the Russian director who had been, imprisoned by Putin. So how this is working out, I don't know, but all credit to him. Lastly, you mentioned Tannhäuser. This is also directed by an early friend of the show, Lydia Steyer, American who went native and, now lives and works almost exclusively in Europe. This is such a catch. She is one of the most brilliant next-gen directors. I cannot wait to see the production photos for this show.
I guess we stand Steyer over here. Repertoire shows will include Carmen with Igor Akhmechina alternating with Janae Bridges. Something that jumped out at me in this announcement is that Vittorio Gogolo is back in action.
He's popping up a couple times throughout the season.
In Vienna.
The Austrians, famous for their bold political stances.
Yes.
That's right.
So Gogolo alternates with Freddie Di Tommaso, and Erwin Schrott alternates with Christopher Maltman. Lizette Oropeza sings La Traviata with Juan Diego Flores. So that makes more sense. Juan Diego Flores is Alfredo, but not as Polione.
No, I mean, I don't see how that would work.
No.
A friend of the show who I would be very, very interested to see is Benjamin Bernheim in Romeo and Juliet. He'll be in the second cast with Iana Garifulina. First cast stars Nadine Sierra and Samia Pirgu.
There'll be a Salome with 2 casts. I don't know any of these people except for Tomasz Koźniecki, but Simone Schneider is the first Salome, and the second cast
seems to be one of their spintos of go-to spintos right now. She pops up in a couple places this season.
And Jennifer Holloway is the second Salome. Figaro will be revived. Don Giovanni will happen, of course. Let's see, Macbeth.
Lots of work for Nicole Carr, Don Giovanni being one of the shows that she's been contracted for. It's also the first appearance of Emily D'Angelo, friend of the show, who shows up a couple places in the season announcement.
Not quite a friend of the show, but she should be. She's
future friend of the show.
Yes, exactly. Macbeth with Gerald Finley. Looking forward to that. Così fan tutte with Nicole Carr. I believe Emily D'Angelo is also in one or 2 casts. And Louise Alder, I'm a big fan, as one of the Fiordalicis in that production. Okay. So in October, from October 26th to November 10th, find me in Vienna. I'm probably going to buy tickets to every single performance of Billy Budd.
You don't even have to do that in advance. You can do standing room.
You can charge it to the show. It's fine.
€4, we can cover that.
For those of you who don't follow Huw Montague Rendall or have not seen him perform, he just got a contract with, I think, Warner. It was an announcement that happened. He is incredible. And like I said, after I saw Pelléas and Mélisande, it really stuck with me, and I continue to think about his artistry And if you follow him on social media, you saw he just made his Don Giovanni debut, and he was posting some videos, and he sings the champagne aria like it's a piece of cake, and like that is notoriously
not.
Yeah. He's such a great actor. He's so beautiful on stage, and he's so thoughtful, and he's gorgeous. I mean, he's literally like, if you could imagine like if I could like
design a Billy Budd in a lab.
If I could design a boyfriend in a lab.
Well, you're happy, but I'm not. This is part of the repertoire. This is the Willy Decker production. Willy Decker famously, of course, did the Traviata at the Met, which had the enormous
clock Traviata, yeah.
The clock Traviata. And when you look at this production, it is absolutely period perfect down to the gold buttons on the brocade on the uniform. I could not be more disappointed.
Well, you want a modern interpretation of Billy Budd?
Absolutely. I want to see it like a submarine.
A couple of, standard repertoire offerings from Vienna, but with casting that I would really like to see. Madame Butterfly with Marina Rebecca and Don Pasquale with Pretty Yende, two singers I am a big fan of. And in repertoire, that seems like it would be a good match for them, but I haven't heard before.
Grigola comes back as Des Grieux in Massenet's Manon. They're doing a Monteverdi show, The Return of Ulysses, which is, I didn't know that they did Monteverdi there, but Cyril Dubois will be in that cast. I'm a big fan. One for Weston, Fitzner's Palestrina, conducted by Thielemann and starring Michael Spires.
What won't he do?
I know. Lisa Davidson sings Tosca with Freddie Di Tommaso. The second cast is the third cast is Alexandra Kursak with her husband Roberto Alagna, and the second cast is Sonia Yoncheva with Piotr Bechawa and Ambrogio Maestri. Tales of Hoffman will star John Osborne.
And another appearance of Nicole Carr in that Tales of Hoffman.
Yeah, she is. Probably as Antonia, I would imagine.
Rigoletto
with Dmitry Korchak. Hansel and Gretel. Die Fledermaus. Turandot. Michael Fabiano singing Kalaf. Pagliacci, Cav Pag with Jonathan Tettleman as Canio.
And Jonas Kaufman as Silvio.
As Silvio?
Turito.
Yeah. If you heard my conversation with Jonathan Tettleman from a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I'm asking Jonathan to please slow his roll and don't do these spinto rolls just yet. But here he is already in 2025.
He's not listening to you.
Canio. I know. The voice is so pretty and he's so handsome. Anna Netrebko singing Ariadne. So apart from what we think about Anna Netrebko as a person, what do you think of her as a singer of Strauss?
Color me skeptical.
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
sure that she has the discipline to maintain the transparency of tone that you really need in those kinds of roles. Especially given how she's been singing since she started singing heavier rep, where like you can kind of pull it off in the Italian side, where some more blood and guts can take you really far. I'm not sure that it would work quite the same way in Ariadne. Yeah. I don't hear that role as being a good fit for her voice.
Yeah, I also don't think of her as somebody who cares much about language. And I feel like this is, it's Strauss, so it is very text-centric, even though it's heroic. Vittorio Gogolo comes back to sing, what's his name?
Manrico,
with Maria Agresta as Leonora in Trovatore, and Clementine Margan and Artur Rucinski. The second cast of Trovatore has Carissima Stoyanova and Luca
a favorite
Salzi.
in Vienna, Stoyanova.
Yeah, and Piotr Bechawa. Fidelio is happening with Michael Spires. That's exciting. I don't know who Simona Schneider. We talked about her already. Barbara Seville will happen. Werther with Matthew Polenzani and Kate Lindsay. That's a good one. Two friends of the show. Elixir of Love with Nadine Sierra. And Andrea Chenier with Michael Fabiano and Sonia Yoncheva. So I guess Michael Fabiano has just declared, I'm singing these things now. This is where I am now. So, fine.
Arabella, an opera that really doesn't get done very much stateside, but is really, really beautiful with Camilla Nylund and Margaret Plummer and Michael Folla
and Sabine de Vielle as...
She's probably the Fiakermili.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess she could be... I guess she might be Stenka. I'm not sure.
Lohengrin with Camilla Nyland again. Christian Thielemann. There'll be a ring cycle with Lisa Davidson, I assume, singing Sieglinde.
Yes, Anya Kampa's doing the Brunhildes in that cycle.
I would hear her Sieglinde. That's perfect for her right now.
Yes. She is taking your advice and is not going whole hog.
Yeah. Later in the year, there'll be, to almost end the season, there'll be Rosenkavalier with Lisa Davidson and Emily D'Angelo and Sabine Devielle. That is a bomb. Yeah,
that'll be an event not to be missed.
And then they close the season with Peak Dom with Anna Netrebko. Yay. And there are some concerts, Sonia Yoncheva, Pretty Yende, Aaron Schrott, etc. So overall, I mean, it's amazing what they get to hear in Vienna, that, you know, these people,
they do an opera every night, basically.
Yeah.
And
yeah, absolutely.
It's overflowing.
You know, from a director's point of view, when you look at these titles on paper, these are all household name operas, right? There's nothing that's really surprising in terms of the programming. It's when you get...
Except Palestrina.
Yeah, okay, Palestrina and Fin de Partie. But when you get into the directing staff, that's when one's eyes really start to open, right? So the Carmen on paper, whatever. The Calixto Bieto Carmen, which is... That show is just known for being out of its mind. You're looking at directors like Tatiana Gurbacka, Klaus Gut, Hans Neuenfels. The directors are the ones which are going to blow up these conservative titles and really make an impact, along with the singers that you've mentioned.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Viennese audiences are quite as into the Regie Theater as like some of the more, as like Berlin or some of the more German houses.
It ain't Stuttgart, baby.
No, but they are definitely more on board to take a reimagining, which it helps when you have a million chances to see these operas every year. I think there's not kind of the same, there's not quite the same kind of like scarcity mindset that can really seep in when you get that conservative criticism of US productions of like, but I just want it to be beautiful. Like, it doesn't have to be beautiful if it'll come back in a year.
I also give the Vienna State Opera credit that on its website, it lists its conductors, its singers, of course, its directors. It also lists its pianists. I mean, how much of a like pat on the back is that? They hold their collaborative pianists in such high regard. They get their headshots and bios on their own page of the Staatsoper website.
That's
Amazing.
Respecting musicians. I like it. I've never really been somebody who used Twitter that much, but I sort of gave up on it. But right. I did manage to see some of the back and forth between this band magazine article and Sarah Connolly responding to her haters on Twitter, and then suddenly the Twitter account or the X account just disappearing. What do we call that? A dirty delete?
A dirty delete. Yeah, well, the Van Magazine article would include the head of Amnesty International among Dame Sarah's haters for some of her comments about the great strides that this regime is apparently making towards human rights, which seem pretty flimsy from
I
an
don't
outsider's
know
perspective.
what happened to her. I wonder if she just went crazy or something, because like I used to respect her so much, and I feel like this is not the first thing that she's done that's been sort of like question mark, you know. I don't know what happened to her, but I was a fan. I don't know what I can say about her anymore. I am becoming a fan of Osmik Grigorian. When I saw La Rondine in HD, they did one of those staged, we're just dropping in on rehearsal, and Osmik Grigorian just happens to be rehearsing Un Bel D.
Who could have foreseen this serendipitous placement?
Yeah. But she seems to be like a very committed actress. But I mean, she has this very, you know, I guess for lack of a better word, steely voice based on the repertoire that she's singing, like whatever Zalame and Janice and Janufa. And maybe Butterfly isn't like the vehicle to introduce her to audiences, because that's not exactly the type of voice you want in Butterfly. But I have to encourage you to all go back to Parterre and to read friend of the show Harry Rose's review of Butterfly. And I think it sort of helps you understand what Osmik Grigorian is all about. I'm really looking forward to the HD. I'm not crazy about the Minghella production, but it's a production we have. And it has Elizabeth DeShong and Jonathan Tettleman and Ozma Gregorian making her Met debut. So looking forward.
It's interesting because I remember like stumbling across her name in the comment section of Parterre like 5 years ago when she was like, "Oh, this is the new singer that like everyone needs to hear. This is the new singer that everyone needs to hear." And like finally now everyone is going to get a chance to hear her. So I hope they take that opportunity upon themselves.
I'm excited about films about Vivaldi. I feel like we need a good biopic right now. I didn't see Chevalier. It didn't really catch fire I thought it would.
Yeah.
Maestro was a dud. I would love to see something about, I think his life was so fascinating. Antonio Vivaldi.
And I don't think it's going to be an adaptation of the old audio cassette of Vivaldi's Ring of Mystery, which was one of the sequels to Mr. Beethoven Lives Upstairs that I had as a child. George, if you were wondering about my media digestion habits from the 90s, there you go.
Cue the Four Seasons. Obviously, that'll be part of the soundtrack.
Yeah. That's a no-brainer, but I like Vivaldi. I like Vivaldi's vocal music. I mean, it all sounds the same.
Get Vivica Jeannot in there. Let's see.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guys, before we wrap it up, I know I'm opening up a can of worms here. Just to return to the story about La Scala naming Fortunato Ortumbina as the new GD. He takes over from Dominique Meyer. And of course, this is related to the Italian premier, Giorgia Meloni, part of a far-right government, trying to promote Italian nationals into these leadership positions and favoring them over foreigners for major cultural posts, right? What gives?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting new dimension on this story that we talked about about a month ago, just over a month ago, because originally it was framed as Dominique Meyer has to retire now that he'll be in his 70s, and they want to replace him with this guy. But Dominique Meyer is also French, and so maybe a little bit more complicated than it initially seemed, which it was already pretty complicated.
I mean, look, opera is an international art form, perhaps one of the most international art forms. And I think it's that tension between the culture of the leadership and the audience and the artist. And that's what makes for interesting conversations and for interesting art. When I think about intendants in Germany, a number of them, Barry Kosky, say not German. Some of the others that I've worked under, not German. Similarly, we can just look at the Met, right? Volpe, Austrian. Who was his Hugh Southern, English, right? So you've had GMs at the Met who have not been American, and I don't think people found that problematic. I think people found that exciting.
Well, those people weren't fascists, so.
Well, that also helps.
Alleged fascists.
Let us wrap this show up.
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call to wrap things up on the show this week, starting with Oliver Camacho.
Well, besides my aforementioned Parterre review of Madame Butterfly, I have to tell you a really quick story. I interviewed Harry Bickett for my other job, and that interview already aired. And as I was creating the playlist, I needed to find a recording of the quartet from the first act of Don Giovanni. And I knew that there was this new Golda Schultz recording that just came out like a minute ago. And it happens to be the first track of that album. The album is called Mozart, You Drive Me Crazy, with the Kammerakademie Potsdam. And I thought it was going to be like just your standard Mozart arias recital, but it is not. It is a very well thought out program of Mozart ensembles and arias that feel like they belong in a sequence and are performed really, really stylishly by the orchestra, especially, but also by Golda Schultz. And I did not know she had it in her. I knew she was sort of awesome, but I think she's really awesome. This is a great album. If you want to just listen to a little bit of Mozart, a little bit from each opera, I recommend Mozart, You Drive Me Crazy.
Matt Cummings.
So I don't know if this album recommendation is going to be quite as successful as that one, but I did stumble across a story this week that apparently the Tolkien estate has finally approved this 17-hour-long operatic adaptation of The Lord of the Rings, which is going to be released as an album in 2025. Now, Weston's out there saying there already is a 17-hour opera about Lord of the Rings, and it's called Der Ring des Nibelungen. We'll share this article on our website so you can hear a clip of Boromir's funeral that's underneath. I'll wait to hear a little bit more before I make my final decision, but I will say that there's maybe only one piece of media with a huge web of cast and a somewhat meandering storyline that I would like to hear a 17-hour opera of, and it's Twin Peaks. Let's get to work there.
That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, get your voice heard, and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. And that's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell, your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is Weston Williams. For co-host Matt Cummings, with our guest Anthony Roth Costanzo, I'm George Cedarquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you walk back your criticisms of foreign governments when they hire you. We're back with an all-new show next week, plus you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more gay bait casting of Britain operas. Join us.